Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. This is a horror podcast, so we may talk about sensitive subjects such as the R word, the abuse word. There will be F-bombs and other words.
Potentially.
But that's not to say that that's, all it's about. We're not like, the Cannibal Holocaust Hour over here. This is more of a fun psychological, not really experiment. It's a journey to interview several people in the industry and find out what exactly it is they like about horror.
Yes.
But that being said, and with the disclaimer out of the way, Steve, what do we got coming up?
Oh, not a whole lot. We just wrapped an interview with Mr. Nat Cassidy. That was fun. We've got Discord party, listen party on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and drawing party also on Discord 9 p.m. Sunday. Not too much else to talk about at the moment, so we can just jump straight into things. Today we are talking to Ms. R.J. Joseph, poet and author, best known for Into the Forest and The Dead Inside. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you both so much for having me today.
Our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Yeah,
I love the cover art Into the Forest.
Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the rest of this year, I'm working on quite a few appearances, kind of book fairs, taking my horror collection, Hell Hath No Sorrow, Like a Woman Haunted, on the road. So I'll be at Texas AuthorCon at the end of July, at PopCon Louisville at the end of August. In September, I'll be at the Spooktastic Book Fair. And then Multiverse in Atlanta, ZervCon at Cape Cod, and then the Texas Book Festival in Austin.
Oh my God. You're going to be busy.
Yeah.
Tour.
Yes.
You have a road crew, I wonder.
Yeah. Well, in this interview, we'll be asking 3 sets of questions covering your childhood, teenage, and adult years, and then we'll have a wrap-up section towards the end where we talk about any common themes that have cropped up multiple times in the interview. But that said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there are any questions that you don't want to answer, just say pass and we'll move on.
Okay.
But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Well, church was really scary.
Yeah.
I was raised Southern Baptist, and so we talk about, the hellfire and brimstone and, all of that, the talking in tongues, and then we have monsters in the book. We're talking about spirits, and it was fascinating, but it was very scary. Yeah, so that was probably my very first memory of scary things. But also, I've always been drawn to the movies and the books anyway. So my dad read a lot of Stephen King. And Dean Koontz, John Saul. I wasn't allowed to read my mama's books because those were like romance stuff. But they just never thought to hide the horror stuff. And so, I dug into all that. My favorite book as a kid was a collection of Edgar Allan Poe short stories.
Cool.
They were just so wonderful. I loved the words. I loved how many words there were. I loved how everybody he talked about kind of was this unreliable narrator type person. I didn't know that's what it was called then, but I remember thinking, well, how can I believe them? How do we know what is happening here? Yeah, so I've been that creepy kid that sits in front of the television to watch the horror movies. So back in the olden times, there used to be horror movies on Saturday mornings, Saturday afternoon-ish, where they played a lot of the classic ones. So, of course, I was totally in love with The Creature from Black Lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
I just rewatched the other night. It Came from Outer Space and Them. So those movies are really close and dear to my heart.
Okay,
that has got to be just a common thing in multiple states and locations. Because I also had a channel, local channel on Saturday afternoon, and they would always run the horror movie marathons. It's kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The internet has probably changed that for good.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Let's see. So Stephen King and Dean Koontz comes up fairly often, obviously, in our calls, but I haven't heard John Saul brought up too much. Did you have a particular book of his that you liked or read?
Yeah, I want to say my favorite was Suffer the Children. But and John Saul, so I'm Gen X. I'm a little bit seasoned here. So I want to say that John Saul was probably more prolific in the 70s or so. But my favorite one that I read from him was Suffer the Children, and he really did that whole dread thing really, really well. So like you were just tense and nervous just because you were reading what he's writing. I love that. I love that feeling. Just that whole thing about that.
Okay. Did you read Stephen King as a kid, or you're just saying that those were laying around?
No, I did. I read Stephen King at way too young. Yeah, I mean, I was always a good reader. Doesn't mean I understood that I understood what I was reading all the time. But I read Carrie when I was like, I don't know, maybe 7.
Oh, wow.
Just because I liked the cover. The cover had a girl and she was all bloody. And I was like, oh, well, they didn't hide this one. I guess it's okay for me to have it. So I read
it. Perfect kid logic. Look, you didn't tell me not to.
Exactly. Right. You didn't say no. So, I mean, there we go. Yeah. I mean, and then I would read everything. I mean, until I got old enough to buy my own books. I mean, I would just filch my dad's. Because he always had the good ones anyway.
Other than the cover, was there anything else that you liked about Carrie?
Well, I liked that it was a girl. Mm-hmm. I was watching this stuff at a time when women just held a certain position in a lot of these stories, right? And so I thought, well, if she's got the blood on her, maybe she gets to be the monster this time, instead of like having to be rescued from it or having to, fall and trip on nothing that's not there. I was just really hoping that I got to see what a girl monster would look like. That was fascinating. I wanted to be the monster. Like, okay, well, let's see if she pulls this off.
Edgar Allan Poe, it was mostly unreliable narrator and vocabulary, I think you said.
Yes.
Any particular story jump out to you of his?
Oh, my very, very favorite of all time was Berenice.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
What'd you like about it?
Well, it was super creepy. I'm thinking about, like, even as a kid, I would think about this lady who's dying, and that was so sad to me. But what was even sadder was that the narrator didn't seem to be worried about her dying. He was focused on her teeth. And, of course, when you're young and you're already losing teeth and you kind of worry about that, you go, well, man, like, are my teeth more important than the whole rest of me? Which sounds kind of crazy, but again, kid logic.
Yeah.
But even as I got older, I realized that story has always been fascinating to me because that's not the most terrifying thing in there isn't her dying. And we're always told, we're kind of thinking, well, dying is bad. But I thought in her case, that might have been best because you don't want him taking your teeth while you're alive, It was just a really weird thing. I thought, oh man, they built up this horror as if her dying is the scary thing. No, the scary thing is him taking her teeth. That was the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're, already dead for it, at least you're not conscious or present for the whole terrible process.
Well, exactly. But there's also just the whole value thing, right? Like thinking the whole time you're there, you wanting him to value you and your life. And he actually just valued your teeth. That's it. Just that part. That's all.
I'm wondering if you'd had dental work at that point, or was it just losing your childhood teeth?
It was just losing the childhood teeth. That was bad enough, but I do have dental. I do have issues with that whole thing. Yeah.
Not uncommon. A lot of people do.
You mentioned you're gonna say something?
No.
You mentioned Creature from the Black Lagoon. What'd you like about that?
Oh, I love the love story. Okay. So yeah, before I embarked on horror like wholeheartedly, I was writing romance mostly.
Okay.
Mostly because it was more acceptable. Again, here I'm in the South. I'm a girl. It was just a thing. But I loved the love story that the creature was in love with this woman he'd never met. And I just felt so sad for him, that he couldn't, because he was so different from her, that he just couldn't be with her. And then I didn't see any other creatures like him. And so it just made me really sad for him. It was kind of like that whole longing, the melancholia of love unrequited, like that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How'd you feel about Beauty and the Beast?
I absolutely love Beauty and the Beast. My daughter and I still watch that one often. We watch all the renditions because I think I'm a little in love with Beast. She might be too, but she can't tell me. So I don't know. But yes, that is a really great. I guess I can't say update because I'm pretty sure that story predated the creature story and kind of actually influenced it. But yeah, I love that the Beast got his happily ever after. I almost wish that he could have stayed the Beast though, because none of the renditions when he turned into the prince did I think that was an improvement.
Right? He's boring now. This is no.
So no, let's keep him. Let's let him stay Beast. Let him stay
right? At least he was interesting. What about It Came from Outer Space?
Oh my goodness! So I just rewatched this last night because I have been I've been a little under the weather. So my comfort space is drinking tea and watching these horror movies.
Okay, as you do.
Yeah, as you do. And what I really liked about that movie that struck me again last night was that we don't see the terror until the movie is well in, but it seems the whole time that was purposeful because that wasn't the scariest thing there. Those aliens were not the scariest things. It was the surrounding people that wanted to, like, you know, get the whole mob together and go and just kill them, even though the astronomer guy was telling them, hey, no, they just need more time. Mm-hmm. I found that the way that it kept that tension. I mean, it's really indicative of human nature, I guess, is the way that we kind of see our communities. You know, you think that the worst thing would be an alien coming down, but like, no, that might not be
the worst things are already here.
Yeah, exactly. The worst is already here, and they're just minding their own business. So,
yeah, it'll be I want to say interesting, but also scary day if we ever find out there really are aliens.
Oh my gosh! Right?
Even before we even find out what the aliens are like, it's just going to be scary seeing what the people do.
Exactly. Well, exactly, and I feel like that's probably my worst fear is that that's going to make everything much worse. Like if they have no nefarious intentions, it won't matter because.
And you believe them?
I mean, yeah. Look at their eyes.
We've seen this movie before.
Exactly right. Like I don't know, what do we have that they would want anyway? Like we're so insignificant. Like no, let them
it's
go.
Cool guys, I got this. I'll just go up to the ship and I'll say Klaatu Verada necktie.
Necktie.
Shit. I said the words.
Not the right ones. Oh, did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Well, no. So I grew up in the inner city. It just wasn't a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So my dad read a lot of interesting, cool stuff, but he was also very, I don't know, kind of this weird guy in a different kind of way. He also was very, very paranoid about things happening to us. So we couldn't go and play outside after a certain age. So we just didn't do that.
Wait, after a certain age?
Well,
I guess, yeah. Okay, that can kind of. It took a second for that to click. I thought you were going to say a certain time, meaning at night, but then you said age, and it. Okay.
No, he did not want us playing outside at home at all. Like I remember we played outside when we were really small because my mom was a homemaker. But once we got to a certain age, and again, this is like the late 70s, early 80s. I know there was a lot of serial killer stuff happening, but my dad also read like all those tabloid newspapers and stuff.
Right.
I really don't know what he thought was going to happen, but we didn't get to go outside like that. So trick or treat was not a thing. I used to fantasize about it. Like, of course we wanted to. And Mama would buy us candy at home. Or if we happened to go like to a store with her and they were handing out candy, we would get it. But we didn't get to do trick or treating. So it definitely was one of those things I put on the list to do with my own kids. So I could kind of live through them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Any scary dreams or reoccurring nightmares?
Oh, of course. Well, I mean, most of them are in my stories.
Okay. Right from life, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The very first nightmare that I ever had was I was really young. I was super, super young. I mean, I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 or so. And Mama says it's crazy that I remember this stuff. And I go, but this is traumatic. Of course I remember that. I woke up screaming because I had a dream that, I live in Texas. I don't know if I mentioned that. Here in Texas, we have all these critters, right? Like, it's not like Australia, but it's kind of like Australia. Yeah. So we have all these huge bugs. We have these huge flying cockroaches. And it's hot and steamy here, so they love it. And so I was terrified of those things. I had a dream once that there was one lying right on my chest, feet up, of course, but all I could do was just look at it. And I was thinking, it's on me. And I started to scream. I remember Mom and Daddy running into the room and they're looking for the thing and it's not there. And they kind of look at me and go, just go back to sleep. But I was terrified, right? I was terrified. That was the first nightmare I ever had. And I realized that once I got older, I thought, that could have been a perfect story that you could have written. And I just never thought to do it because it was so horrifying.
Funny story. The first time I ever saw a palmetto bug. So I grew up in the north, and then I spent a lot of time in the south, and now I'm back up north again. But in third grade, I was living in Chicago with my grandmother, and my aunt and uncle lived in Fort Lauderdale. And so I went down to visit them for summer vacation. And my cousins, my two female cousins, they were both in school. And while I was in school, I would just, I take that back. They were in high school, but they were working because it was summer vacation. So they were off at their whatever jobs they were doing during the summer. And I was hanging out on one of their beds listening to, and I still remember this, it was her Prince tape on a Walkman, the one that had 1999 on it. And I was laying in bed and it was butted up against the wall. And I saw this thing above my head on the wall. And I turned around and I looked at it. And mind you, having grown up north, I'd never seen a bug that before big in my life. Screamed bloody murder. My aunt comes running into the room, was like, "What the hell's going on?" And I pointed to her and she just starts laughing. Explained to me, "Yeah, we have those down here." I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ."
I'm so sorry for you. That had to be even more traumatic. I mean, I grew up with these things, and even now, I'm always ducking them and dodging them. I mean, you can't, no matter where you live, like you can go into the ritziest of neighborhoods. These things they love trees. They love the humidity. They love the wet. They love the heat. So I feel really bad for you. I'm so sorry. That's even more nightmarish.
No. It's better than having it on my chest.
Well, there's that. Well, I mean, because that was the thing. It was touching me. Like, you can exist on your own, but don't touch me while you're doing it.
No, I'm good. Was there ever a time where something terrified you in your childhood in real life?
Maybe dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, dogs count.
Like the outside dogs. And I say the outside dogs because it's this weird thing. Here in Houston, we're kind of rural, but very urban also. Right. And so I have family that lives in the more rural part. They always had random dogs that were just kind of hanging around, but those weren't considered outside dogs, really. When I say outside, I guess I should say unknown.
Right.
I remember
running loose in the street.
Yeah, running loose in the street. I was coming home from or going on my way to Sunday school or something one morning, and this one huge dog, he got off of his chain. Like, he was literally chained. He wasn't leashed, he was chained. Huge dog. And he came and got hold of my skirt. It was my favorite skirt. I was so upset. And I mean, I'm standing in the street, I'm screaming. The dog tore my pantyhose, he tore my skirt. And I just remember thinking, this is terrible. This is how I'm going to die. I'm just going to die right here with this dog eating on my skirt, and nobody's going to help me. And, but then whoever's dog it was, like, they finally came and got him. But I mean, at this point, the damage is done. Like, I can't go anywhere. I have to take to my fainting couch now. Like, I can't do anything else at this point.
I've never heard it referred to as a fainting couch before, but I like that.
You ever heard of fainting couch before? Yeah, it's it's a place where you go to faint.
Yes, it's a place where you go to faint. Yes, all Southern ladies have them.
Yes. Flipping that last question around, do you remember a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Oh, absolutely. My mama was really, really good. So besides his interesting quirks in reading material, my daddy just wasn't a great person. So I feel like my mama kind of did overboard, like, with all this stuff. And I ask her to this day, my sister and I talk so much. She has never once ever said to us, be quiet or shut up. And I think about, that's probably indicative of how she raised us anyway. She always supported everything we wanted to do, even though she would kind of steer us in a little bit different directions. She never said outright, no, you can't be a writer. They make no money. What she said was, yeah, you can be a writer, but why don't you go and learn how to use computers? I think these things are going to be around for a while. So she was really supportive. And I think that even though we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't know, we didn't realize we were poor till we got older. And we started going to probably our middle school, high school, and we go, oh, this is not how everybody else does things. But we had days at the zoo, our birthday parties. She always had a cake. There were 3 of us. So I have 2 siblings. And so there was always the 4 of us. And I always thought, this is wonderful. This is great. It's just us. That's all we need. And I always felt so supported. I think that's why my sister and brother and I have the ego that we have sometimes. Because Mama was like, you can do anything you want to do. But she like really meant that. She still means it today.
Other than your dad, was anybody else in the family fan of horror?
No, actually, no.
Okay.
Mama, oh my gosh, she just now starts reading my stuff. And I go, Mama, no, this is not the time to start at all. I mean, so yeah, no, she's not usually been a fan of horror, but I think I messed around and got her hooked on like those little 100-word horror stories. And she goes, oh, these are not so bad. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she hasn't read like these other.
Warm her up first. So these next 2 questions I'm going to ask as a pair. We're going to start with a negative one so we can end on a positive one. The first one being, do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I hurt, that would probably have been my brother, my younger brother. Yeah, he was, oh my gosh, he was such a brat. He's still a brat. And he was, as happens in some families, he was like the golden child, the boy child. And so like nothing he did was wrong. So he used to have this skin condition when we were little called impetigo. And he would get like these really big blisters and things on him, which had to be miserable. I mean, my grown-up self recognizes that's terrible. I didn't want him to have that. But what he would do is he would come and terrorize my sister and me. And then he would run away from us, but then throw whatever part of his body, had the breakouts up so that we could hit that. And then we would get in trouble.
It's like a cheater.
Right. So not only because we were fighting him, but because now we've like injured his injury. So yeah, I picked on him a lot. So I'm pretty sure he was the first one.
Can't say he didn't completely deserve it.
I mean, right? See, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm like, look.
Again, so flipping that question around, ending on the positive, do you remember the first person you helped?
When I was in school, I was the kid that like knew a lot of stuff, but I didn't like to let people know that I knew a lot of stuff. Because I didn't really want to talk. I didn't want to be on display like that. Yeah. But I did help. I remember helping friends with work, like, and them being surprised that I knew the stuff, and then the teacher being also surprised that I knew the stuff. Right. So I did used to like to help people in class. I think I should have known then that I was going to grow up to be a teacher of some sort. Should have known then.
Moving into teenage years, do you remember any particular books or movies that jumped out to you in your teenage years?
Oh my gosh, those V.C. Andrews books.
V.C. Andrews.
Oh, the whole series of all that. Just, I don't even know what to call it, because it wasn't until I saw another writer on social media talking about it, or maybe a few months ago. And I thought, that was terrible that we were reading that at that young age. I mean, but at the time it was so gothic and it was so secret, but not like, it kind of reminded me, like, I know that these people were moneyed people from, I don't know, I would guess New England or something, but it was so Southern in the way that the secrets just kind of whispered and danced through everything. And you think people should have known stuff, but they didn't. And those books just really reminded me of how things went, like at home. Like, I don't know if anybody's as good at keeping secrets as Southern people are. Like, they don't tell you stuff. Like, stuff is happening right in front of you, and they just kind of go, oh, no, it's not. That's something else. They just pretend that you didn't even say anything. So V.C. Andrews, oh my gosh, I devoured all of those books about that family that just was something else. And even the little offshoots, those were like my very favorites.
Okay. Any other authors or any other books or movies even, maybe?
Well, I was big into the romance stuff too. So I did do the whole Sweet Valley High romance series with the twins. Yeah, I know, right? So like, yeah.
I didn't read them, but I recognize the title.
Yeah. So it's like a different type of these are different stories. These are romance stories with blonde characters as opposed to the horror gothic stuff with the other blonde ones, which I thought was kind of cool because, a lot of times I watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock, and I was fascinated by his choice of blondes all the time. And I thought, okay, this works. I get why you did that. But then when I see something like a VC Andrews, I'm like, oh, that's different though. How we use this representation in a different kind of way.
I'm curious what you meant about understanding why he used blondes.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
We think about blonde as being innocent. And so when things start to happen, we never would suspect that character, right? It's kind of like that dark and light kind of thing, because I'm like, for instance, in The Birds, that's another one of my favorite rewatches I watch all the time. Tippi Hedren is very cool. She's very icy, a little standoffish, but we never think of her as the bad person. Even when like that scene in the diner when the people are like trying to say she came to town, she brought the bird stuff happening. As an audience, I don't think we ever quite buy that because she doesn't look like she could be doing this stuff. But then when they bring, I forget her name every time, the brunette who was the teacher, used to be in love with the guy before and followed him to the town. She's dark haired. And so typically we see that this is a person that would be doing something terrible, even though she wasn't a villain. I feel like we were being set up for, spoilers here, when she died, when the birds got her. It's almost like the whole, she's dark haired and she's got to be dark spirited too, right? So I really like what he did with using the blondes, because even in Psycho, as bad as Vivian Leigh's character, she was doing terrible stuff. We still have that doubt, right? Because we're going, but she looks so innocent, like she represents light, right? I think that kind of helped to feed my whole fascination with woman monsters. Like, that's a great way to disguise one,
right?
Yeah, make her all light,
hiding in plain sight.
Let's see. So probably no Halloween for teenage years. Any scary dreams as a teen?
Oh man, all of them. Those teenage years just seem to be, they're covered in like puberty. That was a terror. That was a real life nightmare. It was always horrible. I think the biggest thing that was nightmarish then, again, was that fear of being noticed. I just didn't like being paid attention to in certain kinds of ways, I guess, because that's the age where, things start budding and it wasn't just, little boys that kind of pay attention to you. It's also pedophiles, right? And that was always so uncomfortable. I think that the biggest terrors were like, running around the desk in the gym office because you had to take something to the little pedophile gym coach or something. And it was really terrible because, I say it as if it's not, but it was really terrible. I feel like people didn't really care what happened to us back then. It wasn't like now when these things happen, we reported, people they get in trouble as they should. It was one of those things where really, especially here in Southern Black culture, it was like, oh, well, maybe you should just run faster. Just don't let him catch you. And I remember thinking, this is terrifying. I don't like running anyway. Like, you're making me run and I don't want to, and I feel like I'm being chased.
It's your fault for not running fast enough. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like I'm being chased and I feel like I'm being, like, no matter what I wear, what I do, I feel like there's this message being given that I want you to come do this or something. It's like, no, I'd rather you not. Can you not? Pretend I'm not here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest nightmare as a teenager, was just trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah. When you said earlier about not being allowed to play outside, it did click after, half a second when I said I thought you meant a certain time, but I got that. And I also get the thing about the clothing too, because like there was that one thing I saw going around the internet about, I think somebody on Twitter, commented about, shouldn't be dressing like that. And some girl replied to her that I was 7 years old and wearing overalls. Like, get out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. There's this display, an art display that I can't name where, I can't remember where
it's the clothing that they were raped in. Yeah.
Yes. And so I'm really happy that there's a better understanding about those things now, because when I was younger, it really just wasn't. It was just kind of a thing. I don't know that people wanted this to happen. I just think that they didn't stop to think about, can we just stop these people? Can we just do that?
Yeah. I can understand. Obviously, in my case, it wasn't sexual, but I was bullied a lot as a kid. And my grandmother and my father always used to say, you must be doing something to draw attention to yourself.
Yes.
And what they couldn't understand is that what was drawing attention to myself was trying not to be noticed. And,
exactly.
And they keyed into that.
Exactly.
And that's what actually
an animal senses fear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what drew the attention, is me trying not to draw attention.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, it is exactly the same thing. Predators do notice that. Like, they notice when you're not trying to be engaged in it. I think that that's what's attractive to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Silence.
Yeah. And like I use the word predators to describe that. You know, it can be sexual predators or bullies or just predators of any kind.
Sure.
People that have ill intent.
Exactly.
Notice that shit.
So again, flipping that question around, was there a time in your teens when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Still at home.
Okay.
Okay.
My mama, I don't know. I always try to be the same kind of mama that she is, but I'm not. I'm a different kind of mama. I think I'm okay, but she was always so protective. And so even as teenagers, we were able to do different activities. Not a lot, because we didn't have a lot of money and she didn't drive, but I mean, we were able to do things like be on drill team, we were to be cheerleaders, belong to the writing clubs. So at home, that was still a really good safe space. I found that I felt safe inside my stories, because like I could do whatever I wanted to do. So if I wanted to have somebody die, that could happen. If I wanted to have somebody eaten alive, that could happen. If I wanted to have this girl turn into a monster and save the whole world, that could happen. So that was another thing that Mama did teach us a lot, was that words are powerful and that they're important, and that you have to choose them very, very carefully. Because once you put them out, you can't take them back. And so I think that once I got to be a teenager, I started to play around with that a lot more. And it made me safer to realize that I could write the sappiest. My first publication professionally ever that I got paid for, I was like 17, right? It was like this little angsty love poem to one of those confessions magazines that my mama always had that I couldn't read till I was like a teenager. And I remember thinking, this is totally not how I feel inside, but if I can pretend that that's how I feel inside, people will give me money. So there was a comfort in being able to kind of create whatever kind of a feeling or reality that I wanted to with these words, with these stories, with these poems. That was very comforting. It's still very comforting now.
Right. You probably enjoy the interview we did with her name was Sarah Gierski. I can't remember if she lives in Norway or Sweden, but she actress, author, producer, director, I think all of that. And she also got into writing horror stories, scripts for her. Her father passed away when she was 12 from cancer. And coming from a Slavic background, they didn't really talk a lot. And she also, in her case, kind of accidentally stumbled upon the fact that, if she started writing her stories as just like an exercise or maybe something to do because she enjoyed doing it and had the background of history with her father also enjoyed horror. And we, as the conversation went along, came to understand that it gave her this sense of empowerment of, she gets to choose who dies and who lives and how they die and when they die, which obviously she didn't get that experience in real life.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yes, that's nice.
Yeah. It's cathartic that way.
Did you start meeting other friends who were fans of horror in your teenage years, or did that not come until later?
No, that didn't come in until way later. No, my friends that I hung out with when I was a teenager, we wrote together, but we wrote fan fiction about boy bands. So, okay. I mean, we got real. I did a lot of writing. I mean, I'm not going to say it was good writing, but I did a lot of writing. Yes. We would write these little romance fan fiction stories about New Edition and then we'd all pick our character. And I mean, they were all for that. But if I ever talked about trying to do something darker, they would be like, yeah, no, why would we do that?
Right.
So no, I indulged in that other part of my writing life with them.
It's very funny. I mean, fan fiction is obviously something that we all know quite a lot about it in the terms of its existence, but I think that's probably the first time I've ever heard of fan fiction for New Edition.
Oh my gosh! Just imagine any kind of nonsense. But it was fun, right? But we're like, really, first of all, New Edition only comes to Houston so many times a year. Second of all, where would we ever meet them? But we wrote it like it could happen.
Yes, of course. Well, that's why it's fan fiction.
Exactly.
Excuse me. All right. So moving into adult years then. And this may be a longer portion of your life, so I can understand if this might be a little more difficult to pick out 2 or 3. But what are the first things that come to mind in horror as an adult in terms of books or movies or whatever?
Well, first of all, I revisited Stephen King. I read Pet Sematary again as an adult once I had a kid, and it was equally terrifying in a different kind of way.
Right.
I realized that I wrote the first horror story I got published. I wrote when I was pregnant. That experience in itself was just so terrible. I love my children. I do. I love being a mom, but I hated being pregnant. And those hormones, like, they do stuff, right? They create these things in your head, and every bit of trauma that you have ever had, it just starts to manifest, right then, mm-hmm. Like anything else. And I realized I had this dream. Again, I've been really good at writing out my dreams because they're terrifying. And once I write them, they're done. So it's like I've exercised them. Mm-hmm. That very first story was written under the duress of pregnancy hormones. And I had a dream that my father had eaten my kid. He just ate my baby. And I thought, well, I know that I have these daddy issues, and like, he's like this absent person and all, but apparently he's not that absent. And so I wrote it down. And once I wrote it, it seemed a lot less ridiculous because, it seemed more ridiculous, rather, I should say, because I was able to add some different things in it so that it wasn't as terrifying, so that it didn't just represent, oh man, my dad screwed me up, I think he's going to screw my kid up too. Like, that whole thing. It ended up being more like the story that evolved was more like this is how the family keeps their bloodline going, right? Which, it's ridiculous, but it helped a lot. But I think being an adult, what changed was that I realized that anything I thought I could have possibly been afraid of before, that was nothing. See, now I have these little people that are responsible, I'm responsible for, and that is still to date my biggest fear, is that something will happen to them, even though they're now young adults. That's the biggest fear. So that's the biggest thing that happened when I was adult. I was like, wait a minute. Not Pet Sematary people just coming back to life, but wait a minute. What do you mean the kid died? What do you mean?
Right. Yeah.
But
back up a step.
Exactly. Like, what? Oh no.
I have to ask, based on your dream about your father, were you aware of the Greek myth about that before writing that story or having that dream?
You remotely, but not in depth. I was not.
Saturn eating his.
Yeah, eating the young. Like, yeah, I wasn't. You're saying that now, and I'm like, I know that I read all these myths when I was a kid, but I had not put those two together at that time.
Yeah. And for Chris's benefit, so Saturn is the Roman name, but in Greek, it's Cronus.
Ah, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's crazy how all these things like intertwine, right?
Well, and it's funny, Chris brought Joseph Campbell up in the last interview. I'll bring him up in this one. Are you familiar with Joseph Campbell's work? Or
No, I'm not.
Okay, so Joseph Campbell, he's now deceased, but spent his life reading and researching mythologies from all over the world. Every corner of the globe, from recent to 10,000 years ago, like doing whatever research he could. And what I find really interesting about his work is that if you were to take, for example, a comparative religion course in college, they would say, okay, here are the major religions of the world, and here are the things that make them different. And he kind of did the opposite. He said, look at all these similarities that keep cropping up all across all these different religions that had no connection to each other, either because they're geographically distant or distant because there's 10,000 years separating them, or 4,000 years or whatever. And isn't it interesting that these same archetypes keep cropping up? And then digging deeper, saying, why is that? And he was also interested in like Jung and psychology and stuff like that. And he wondered, is there something about the experience of being human that is coming up in these subconscious dreams that, like, if we can understand what those are, then maybe we can address our subconscious human needs and desires in a way that is healthier for us than, for example, mythologies or religions, because depending on how you want to define what a religion is or a mythology, and that's a whole other conversation. He said he summarized religion and mythology into having like 4 purposes in society and stuff. But again, he basically was saying, if we could figure out what these things are addressing, then maybe we can find better ways of addressing them.
I love that. I gotta go look for those works. This is John Campbell?
Joseph
Campbell.
Yeah. The book he is most well known for was called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And basically what he does in that book is he picks one particular archetype, in this case, the hero's journey. And he takes examples from mythologies from all over the planet and gives us example after example after example of these different heroes and the journeys that they take and how the journeys are similar in different respects and what each step of the journey symbolically represents.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that rec. Now I got to go digging.
But yeah, so it's interesting that you, like you said, you maybe had some connection with the myth of Kronos earlier in life, but maybe it either didn't sink in or was just subconscious or something. And then, or maybe not even, but you still had this dream about your father potentially eating your kid that, it's this similar fear that kind of welled up, whether you had inspiration for it or not.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay, so Pet Sematary kind of touched on that. Did you have any other horror media that you would say has really impacted you in your adult life?
In different ways. There was this, oh my gosh, when I started reading Brian Keene and Wrath James White, that whole splatterpunk stuff, that was a whole different life.
Name sounds familiar.
Oh my gosh, it was like, I had a chance to meet Brian a couple of years ago for the first time, and I told him, I'm a lifelong fan, but you hurt my feelings for the very first time. And we just laughed about it because I was like, when I read my first zombie book, I was like, oh, this is great. He infuses all these wonderful characters and all this nuance and all this stuff and all this hope. And then everybody dies at the end. I was so upset. I was like, wait, but why did you make us like them if they were just going to all die? But of course, as I kept reading in the genre, I realized that's a whole zombie subgenre thing. It's just kind of what happens. But the ways that they were writing really, really spoke to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've always been a big fan of Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler and later Tananarive Due also. And so I guess I have to put Due in that same group with Keene and White. Then I'm reading them like late 90s, probably more like early 2000s or so. And I started realizing that there was so much that I could do if I wanted to write the horror. Like I could just be batshit crazy like Wrath James White and write about somebody that can bring people back from the dead over and over again. The Resurrectionist was terrifying. Like I'm just talking about it right now. I'm going, oh my gosh, just the thought of that. That's just utterly terrifying. or the idea that these people in Appalachia, like who live a lot like my family, how I know people to live, like, you know, they can face these zombies, or they can, I think the latest teen book that I've read new was With Teeth. Like this dad is trying to figure out how to pay for his daughter to go to college, and then there's vampires. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they were writing about things that made sense to me in that kind of Gen X kind of power to the people kind of way. And so I'm really excited I'm so happy that they did that, because I think that at that time, as you know, an adult at this point, I'm starting to have kids, and I'm starting to see a lot of things in these systems that I just didn't agree with. I mean, you see them, but now you go, wait, I can write and make fun of it, or I can write and I can dismantle it here. Oh, I can do that. I think that they provided a kind of freedom that I just hadn't thought about. Right. With the writing. I'm like, oh, I can't write like Poe. Of course, nobody writes like Poe except for Poe. And then when I started seeing what they were doing, I thought, well, maybe I could just do what I do. Maybe I could just write like me, and maybe that'll be okay. They're writing like them.
Right.
So yeah, the resurrection has terrified me, but it was also very inspiring.
Let's see. Before I move on briefly, so we actually have interviewed Brian Keene, and Wrath is on our penciled in for a date.
Oh, excellent!
We've reached out to Tanner Eve, but or actually, no, I haven't reached out to her yet. I don't think I found good contact information for her yet. I gotta keep looking for that.
Yeah, you have to have Duon too. I mean, they just, I think that they've done a lot for, when I say contemporary horror, as far as helping. I think one of the major contributions they made was in showing us that you can use your voice, your experiences, and really tell the stories that you want to be told.
Mm-hmm. And it's also important, not even necessarily from the representation aspect as much as even just keeping up with the times, because, you know, yeah, you grew up watching the classics on TV, but, you know, it's now 2024, and the stuff that was filmed in the 40s and 50s there's been a lot of time that's passed in between those two. And there's a lot of experience that's been lived in between those two that not necessarily needs to be spoken to, but
sure.
But there's a lot of material there to be, I don't want to use the word farmed because that doesn't feel right.
Well, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying though. And I think you're absolutely correct. That's the exciting part about seeing other creators kind of pop out and have these different backgrounds, because I mean, again, I love Poe, but I never thought that I'd be able to write my own sort of Poe inspired story, because we didn't see a lot of stories about Black women doing much of anything in the 1800s, right? Except being enslaved. And so, you know, when these writers come out, you go, oh, there's so many experiences that, again, I can't think of a better word than farmed, I guess, to be inspired by maybe. But yeah, I think you're totally right. Like that is a thing that happened once I got to grad school and actually met my horror writing people. When I go, okay, this is who I am, and I have so many stories from different viewpoints that have never been told. Like only I can tell those stories. I need to do that.
I mean, how many times have you heard the phrase about, you know, how many stories is Hollywood going to remake and revisit and recamp? And, you know, there's a lot of those stories out there that you don't have to redo the same story a million different ways.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And that is a thing that, oh my goodness. Oh, we talk about in our camps a lot. There is so much fresh stuff, you know, that's coming out. And it's like, come on. Now, if we have historical horror, or we can't say that historical horror is dead until we actually let everybody get a chance to play with it through different lenses. Yeah. Like, tell me that it's dead after everybody gets a chance to play. Don't just kill it right now. You know, everybody hasn't told the stories that we want to hear yet.
I mean, that would be like, you know, finishing the results of an election without counting all the votes. I mean, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, right? I've heard.
Sorry, being political, but no, it's.
Yeah, but no, you're absolutely correct. I've heard for so many years, oh, vampires are done. And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? The only vampires we got was the fledgling, our Black vampires, the fledgling and Blade. And I was like, really? There's not any more Black vampire stories that could be told. Are you kidding me? And it's over? What do you mean it's over? Where are indigenous vampires? Where are disabled vampires? Like, these vampires would be totally different through these different lenses and experiences. Like, what do you mean they're done? They're overdone.
It's funny that what you just said reminded me of something. So when we interviewed Jeff Burke, apparently he wrote a story. I can't think of what it's called right now, but it's about a werewolf that's trapped on a plane.
Oh.
And so the character is quite literally handicapped because as he and couple other friends were pitching this idea, bouncing it around, they're like, well, obviously you've got to give the wolf some sort of a handicap because they're on a plane. Yeah, so there's a literal handicap.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, I love it. That's a different type of werewolf story.
Yeah.
We need that.
So they haven't all been done.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to the Hollywood thing, I think it's also just the argument there is the meat grinder, because like the best example I can give is how the first Star Wars movies, depending on, how you view them, they're basically a Western set on a different planet.
Yes, they are.
But having that view of it is because it went through Hollywood's meat grinder, and Hollywood only knows how to make like 3 or 4 movies. So they're like, okay, we've got this idea, but we need to fit it into the 4 categories that we know how to make. So we're just going to take your sci-fi movie and make it into a Western.
A spaghetti Western at that.
Yes. Yeah.
At that, yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love that. You're brilliant. I love it.
Anyway, so let's see. Halloween as an adult, do you now dress up?
So every now and again, I'll dress up. My kids are young adults, so they don't really care that much. They're just like, yeah, but can we have candy?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then it's like, okay, fine. But like when they were younger and we moved to the burbs, that was one of the best things. And I could not wait. My older kid, we didn't quite live. We lived not quite in the inner city anymore, but not the burbs either. But instead of taking him trick-or-treating, I used to take him to the mall. So the malls, when there used to be those things called malls, like the indoor ones.
I remember.
The stores used to hand out candy to kids in costumes. So I would take him there. And then when I had my other kids, we would take them trick-or-treating in the neighborhood. It was so much fun because it was just like it looked on TV. And I loved it so much. All the neighbors would come out and people that you don't usually see. And they're like, oh, the kids are getting so big. Like I remember one Halloween, a couple they were expecting. And so she's kind of trudging along with their older kid. And then the following Halloween, they had the twins like in a wagon. I mean, and so it was just really small town like. And I thought, I knew I was missing something good all that time.
Have you had any really scary dreams as an adult or any reoccurring nightmares?
Always. I know one of the ones that I had when my children were younger ended up in my collection and I just waited years to write the story because it was so upsetting. Like I literally woke up in tears, and every time I try to go back to sleep, I'd still see these things. So finally I just got up, that my kids had been turned into zombies, and that I could have left them just to be zombies, but like I couldn't leave my kids. Right. So it was really, really terrifying. That first of all, there's this thing that can happen to them that I couldn't control, but also the parenthood. Sometimes it can be real sticky, right? There are days when even now I will say, listen, I'm just going to get on a one-way train going out of here. I'm just going to leave you out here to do what y'all are doing. And they know that I wouldn't do it. But I mean, as a parent, to think about it sometimes and you go, yeah, that's a nice fantasy, but let me just go on in here and wash these clothes,
Yeah.
So that one was just terrifying. And it took me years to be able to write it. And once I wrote it, it was so sad. I read it like once, I think at the launch of the anthology. And I'm like, I'm never going to read that one out loud again. It was so sad. There's people with tears and I'm going, so it was sad to y'all too. It was sad to me too.
Well, yeah, I mean, mission accomplished. You wrote something and it invoked an emotional response.
Yes, mission accomplished. But I do have a lot of dreams that end up turning into stories because otherwise they just kind of fester and then I can't get rid of them and I'm like, you know what, but you gotta go. So let's
Flipping that last question around, was there ever a time, or has there been a time in your adult life when you were completely calm or safe or bliss?
Oh, well, see, that's a trick question because being an adult is this whole.
It is a trick question because it's impossible to be calm or safe for a
I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just like, do they've met me. They've actually listened to me talk otherwise. I don't know that. I think that, I do think that the time that I feel the calmest and the most at ease is when I can blend all the stuff that I'm trying to do all together. So for instance, so I have this writing thing. Now that the kids are older, I'm doing more outside stuff, like hence the book fairs and stuff. But at the same time, I don't always like leaving them. Like they are young adults. Like my youngest is the ones that are here at home right now. They're like 18 and I got a whole bunch of kids. So they're like 18, 19 and 22 or ish or something. And my oldest daughter's disabled. And so I have perfect care for her when I'm not here, but I feel better when I can take them with me. So like when we have the San Antonio Goulash Festival, that's just a couple of hours up the highway from us. So I load everybody up and we go. I am happiest when
with Max?
Yeah, that's with Max Booth. Oh my gosh, it's a wonderful time. If you've never been, y'all gotta make it that way. The panels
would like to.
Yeah, the panels are wonderful, and Max and Lori are just delightful. I've been a long-time fan of them and their publishing press. I'm excited for all the stuff that they're doing.
Tell him we said hello. We did interview him a couple years back.
Oh, excellent. I will tell him we said hello.
My plan is to, I'm trying to hit all the conventions that are within a 4-hour drive first, and then kind of branch out beyond that. And he's a little more than 4 hours away, so...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always a fun time. But and the thing about them bringing that so close to home for me is that I can take the family. They're at a hotel right across the street. I can go across the street. I can be writer person. I can be bookseller person. I can be talk on the panels person. I can even be academic Professor Rhonda person. Mm-hmm. And then when I get back to the hotel, I get to be mommy person. And it's like, okay, it's time to eat. We're going to eat. Okay, yay, we're going to go eat. And it's just... I like when things work where I can balance all of that at the same time and together. So it's a lot harder to manage when because my day job, I am an English professor. And people think, oh, well, you get all this time off in summer. No, because I teach summer school. And sometimes I do silly things like sign up to teach one class in each summer session instead of signing up for 2 classes in the same one where I don't have summer at all. But that's a me problem. Oops.
That is a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard when balancing. Okay, I got to be Professor Rhonda, and then I got to be Mommy Rhonda, then I got to find time to be Writer Rhonda. It's just really easier when all those things mesh well together. Mm-hmm. So that's why I do it. I'm glad I have the job that I have because I do get to merge the writing part with the work with the campus part all the time. But it's a little bit harder to work the personal parts in. So I'm hoping, now that the last of the kids have graduated from high school, they're off to college and stuff too, but hopefully in the middle of all that, I can kind of have more of those experiences where things just merge well together. That's when I'm happiest, when I can do all the pieces and I'm not worried about that I'm dropping something, like dropping one of the plates. I'm like, nope, all the plates are right here. So it's good. We're fine. We're good.
Again, if I could summarize that, I would say consolidating the different parts of your personality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That tracks.
Yes.
What movie would you say you have watched more times than any other? And this could be over your entire life, and it doesn't have to just be about horror. It could be any movie.
Oh, man. Any movie that I've watched. Poltergeist.
Okay.
I could almost... Okay, not that remade one, though. The first one. The one...
Right, yeah.
We don't count that one.
Yeah, we don't count that. We don't count that other one. Every time I see it's on, I'm watching it. Not the remake, the other one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That hasn't come up on the call yet. So what do you like about that one?
I just love that it's just this classic haunting story, but it also has that whole family conflict stuff in it. You got that teenager that's just wanting to go do her own thing. You got the little bitty kid who feels like, who all the attention is on all the time. And then you got that middle kid, poor guy, that's just terrified of the clown and the tree. Yeah. So you have all this conflict. And I feel like when you throw family conflict on top of supernatural stuff, you just have this perfect mix of shenanigans that just turned out to be so creepy and wild. I think that's what I really liked about actually every iteration of The Haunting of Hill House, but I especially dug the Netflix one because they added that family conflict, that family dynamic into it. So yeah, I watch Poltergeist all the time. I think my favorite scene is probably when Carol Ann is her mom is sending her across the floor on the little scooter thing. And I'm like, would I do that with my kid? If we saw that, I'm like, I don't know. I might be that mom. I don't know.
And if you had to pick a favorite movie, again, across any genre and over your entire life, would it be Poltergeist or a different one?
It would be a different one. I love Poltergeist. It's wonderful. But The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, is like it's just a masterpiece. It's immaculate. And it has Keith David. I mean, like, come on, man. You can't lose Keith David.
Right? Keith David, Kurt Russell.
Yes, exactly. All of the best people. That is my all-time favorite movie. I think that it did all the things, but also it was very realistic, I think. I think that there was, I really like the way that they showed that distrust of each other, still in the midst, though, of a respect for each other, right? Like, you care for these people. You're isolated with them this whole time. You don't know if you can trust them, but instead of just killing everybody and just letting, the strongest person with the biggest gun and, furthest going flame torch go, they actually did kind of try to work together. And I really thought that was cool.
Okay. Do you see any common themes about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
Like, I'm really a sucker for a creature film. Like, creatures are always cool. Now, of the kind that I love, but I'm terrified of, though, I'm terrified of religious horror. That is the most terrifying stuff ever to me. You start talking about somebody being possessed or something in a box, anything like that, and I'm just like, oh no. I'm riveted, but I'm like, oh no, that's terrifying.
A lot of material for that one lately.
Yes. Oh my gosh, right? That's just terrifying.
Immaculate, The First Omen.
Yes. I saw The First Omen. I still haven't seen Immaculate, so I have to go see
First Omen was good. It was better than I was expecting. Like, okay.
Oh, cool.
They came to play with this one.
Oh, cool. Yes, I love it. But of course, I'm literally dying inside that I haven't seen A Quiet Place, this one that came out this weekend.
I haven't seen the new one either.
Yeah, I'm just like, because again, that's a creature feature.
True.
I like monsters, I guess.
Yeah, well, that tracks with your favorite film thing. That's definitely, I would consider that a creature feature.
Yeah, I think so.
So this would be the part where we kind of summarize the topics that have been coming up multiple times in the call, and then maybe talk a little bit about how those topics intersect with horror as a genre.
Mm-hmm.
I think for you, like, there are sort of like, it's like a triad. There's three things that really seem important to you. And I would say they're empowerment, secrets, and romance / love. And the reason that I say / love is because, like with Creature from the Black Lagoon and Beauty and the Beast, like there's an unrequited love, but also you talk about being at home with your mom and time with your kids. There's that familial love. So there's something, whether you want to title it romance or love, some sort of an affectionate thing there that's going on. And I think it's interesting that both The Thing and Poltergeist in different ways touch on all three of these things: empowerment, secrets, and this affection, or at least with The Thing, you use the word respect.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first question is, why do you think those three things are important to you?
Yeah, okay, first of all, I want to know where you were when I had to write this back cover copy for this collection of mine.
Been here the whole time.
Right.
That would have been so much easier had I just had your input and you just distilled it just that way.
You're free to use it on the next one.
Yeah, thank you. These things are really important to me. I mean, empowerment is super important. Because the obvious, I'm a Black woman. Right. Yeah. I live in the South. Yeah. There's not a lot of places to be strong. And as I've gotten older, I've actually found that this is just where I'm supposed to be doing this fight and have, helping voices where I can, helping using my own voice. And love is really important. So even though this horror writing took off a lot faster than my romance writing did, like I have stories that talk about love because it's really important. Like whether it is, like you say, this familial love, this love that we have for our friends, this love that we have for our pets. So I guess that's familial love, or this romantic love. Like it's really important. I think that it gives so many of us a reason to do stuff. Like it's a powerful motivator, to do things because you love other people. Sometimes because you love yourself, you can do things also. I know for me, it's usually the love for other people, though, right? And then these secrets. I'm Southern. I get tired of it, but it's a part of my culture. Like it's just the thing that we do. And I do think that sometimes the secrets can work for you. Like we talked about using blondes as villains and we don't really realize that they're villains. That's when you can have a secret that actually works for you. It's like, yeah, you think this is what I am, but I'm actually something different. And I think that that's kind of important for empowerment because I tell people all this. That one of these times I'm going to write a story about like a middle-aged female serial killer because in my mind, I'm like, I feel kind of invisible nowadays. Thankfully, I'm so excited about that. I know a lot of women don't talk about that, but I'm happy that I can go out somewhere. People literally just don't see me a lot of times. And so if I wanted to do something bad, I could do it because nobody's going to really pay attention to me like that. Mm.
It's funny that you mentioned that to you secrets kind of fell under empowerment because I was thinking that too. It's, secrets have their own power.
Yes, they do.
And keeping them, whether it's your secrets or somebody else's, can definitely affect power, either power balances or power imbalances for better or worse.
Yes. Yeah. This is great stuff. I love it.
So the next question then is, now that we've kind of identified these topics, why horror? Couldn't you address some of these things in other genres? Or do you?
Well, when I have written romance, of course you address love and the secrets and empowerment. I feel like for horror, first of all, it is sort of it's a sibling genre to romance because you're kind of doing the same things, except you're tapping into that unsettlement for horror. I think that it's a perfect vehicle to talk about secrets, though, because then you have that surprise reveal, or you have those points where you go, oh, that's not where I thought I should be directing my fear. I was afraid of this thing, but there's really this other thing over here. Or that, and with empowerment, sometimes, as shown by the whole splatterpunk movement, as created, as set out with, Skip and White and Keene, is that sometimes in order to gain power, you have to horrify people. You have to let people know why the current structures are not working out. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to go look at this. You have to put it right in somebody's face and say, look at this mess. Look at this terror. Look at what happened. And so I think horror is perfect for that.
Mm.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it. And by the way, while we were talking just now, it occurred to me, I remembered the book that we were talking about, Jeff Burke. The book is literally called Cripple Wolf.
Yeah, I am so happy that I have this whole list of scribbled bookmarks. I'm going to go read all of this stuff. Oh my gosh, yes, I need to read that wolf story. I got to have it.
Hope you enjoy it. So I think we got a pretty good summary for you. Is there anything that you thought of earlier in the call that you didn't get a chance to say? Maybe the conversation took a left turn, or maybe something that you think is relevant that we didn't ask about?
No, this is all good stuff. Like, I'm really excited. Like, I was gonna make this meeting, whether this computer was gonna allow me to or not. I'm so happy that we had a chance to chat. I really appreciate y'all having me on. This is cool. I'm excited about it.
We appreciate it as well. Before we close, do you want to, again, let people know what you're currently working on?
Sure. So I have some conferences and things that I'll be going to at the end of the rest of the year. I'll be carrying my horror short story collection, Hell Hath No Sorrow Like a Woman Haunted, with me. It was a Bram Stoker and Shirley Jackson Award nominee, so I'm really excited about it. I'm real glad to take it on the road continuously at Texas AuthorCon, the Spooktastic Book Fair, ZervCon, Multiverse, and the Texas Book Festival. So we'll be on the road, me and that little scary bird baby.
All right. Well, hopefully we will bump into you on one of these shows at some point.
Oh, I hope so. That would be so wonderful.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for your time. And thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We've got a list of all the guests that we've interviewed. We're going to create a bio page for Ms. Joseph, and we can link to whatever she wants us to link to there. So if you want to get in touch with her or find out what she's doing, you can go there. You could also check out the list of people that we'd like to interview. And if you can help us get in touch with any of those people, let us know. Do all the fun stuff, liking, sharing, and subscribing and all that kind of stuff, or just tell a friend.